What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to HQ Spotlight. I'm Jacqueline D'Agostino with Trish Whitaker. Trish, our first show together?
I know. We met yesterday in the makeup room. Here we are today.
So far we've come. So in the NFL, veterans are reporting to camp really all across the board. But today we are focusing in on the NFC North, which last season arguably was one of the more competitive divisions in all of football.
It absolutely was, and we are expecting it to be one of the more competitive divisions in the NFL this season as well, and that is why we are going to map out this afternoon one reason for optimism for each team, with the Lions and the Packers favored to contend for that division title. We know that they are two strong teams in that division, but what about the rest of them? Now it means we get to welcome in our NFL expert, Tyler Sullivan. Tyler, happy training camp. NFL season is upon us. Thanks for joining us today. Let's start with Jordan Love and the Packers. You wrote about it just yesterday. You said that he's flashed some elite potential many times throughout the last season, and you think that's a glimpse into what he can be for the Pack. Why is that?
Yeah, exactly. The reason why Packers fans should be optimistic is because this dude lights it up in the second half of the regular season. And if all of a sudden you can start to see Jordan Love be a little bit more consistent, be a little less streaky, he could be a legitimate MVP candidate. Because if you look at those numbers over the last two seasons, the Packers are 11-5 with Jordan Love from weeks 11 to week 18. He's thrown 28 touchdowns over that span and just 2 interceptions. He has been absolutely lights out over the course of that stretch. And the Packers are going to need him this season to continue to be that level of player down the stretch, because overall their schedule is difficult because they play in a very difficult division. You look at the back half of this season, if you want to start in that week 11, pretty easy. They go to the New York Giants, but after that, divisional opponents against the Minnesota Vikings, at the Detroit Lions, they play the Chicago Bears. So 3 straight divisional opponents. Then you have to go to the Denver Broncos, arguably one of the toughest defenses in the NFL we project this season. You play the Bears on Saturday at Chicago, and you finish off the year Ravens and Vikings. That is a gauntlet for the Green Bay Packers, but the silver lining is that their quarterback typically shines at that point of the season. So if they can tread water for the first few weeks of the season, first half of the season, have a respectable record, and Jordan Love does what Jordan Love does and turns it on at the end of the season, the Packers could really be movers and shakers down the stretch.
Absolutely, Tyler. And Love also has the Packers' first-round pick, wide receiver Matthew Golden, at his disposal this year, an additional weapon for him. All right, let's move on to the Detroit Lions. We know how stacked of a roster they have, but they lost both coordinators to head coaching positions, and on Sunday, another tough blow, losing their star defensive tackle after he had ACL surgery. So, Tyler, Lions fans, they really need your optimistic twist, and that optimism might lie in the hands of Aiden Hutchinson, who they lived without last year when he was injured week 6, but their star pass rusher returns this season. Maybe he's a reason for optimism for Lions fans?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you have someone who currently is the second highest odds to win Defensive Player of the Year, and he is now being re-injected into your defense, yeah, that's probably a little sign of optimism, especially for a team that, without him for a good chunk of the season, was able to finish #1 seed in the NFC. They were able to win their division. Obviously, the playoffs didn't work out the way that they wanted to, being one and done after the bye, but Aiden Hutchinson coming back to this defense is going to work wonders for the Detroit Lions. I mean, we saw just a glimpse of him last season. He played about 5 games. He had 7.5 sacks during that stretch. He was absolutely lights out. I believe he had 5 sacks in one of those games alone. So he is someone who can make an impact on a down-to-down basis on the defensive side of the ball for the Detroit Lions. And just to hammer how important I think he is going to be, you look to that playoff loss last playoffs against the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels was sacked 0 times in that loss. He was only hit twice in that by the Detroit Lions. I don't think that that's happening if they have Aiden Hutchinson screaming off the edge as a part of their defense. So this is a team that is wildly talented. Yes, they lost both of their coordinators. We're going to see how they get over that hurdle. But you have a talented roster that is now going to get better just by proxy of getting healthy and getting Aiden Hutchinson back. This Detroit Lions team is in a Super Bowl window, and as long as they stay healthy, and again, they're already dealing with some injury issues, but if their key stars stay healthy, like Aiden Hutchinson coming back, they're going to be a mover and shaker in the division as well.
Gosh, the Lions perhaps good. The Detroit Tigers good in Detroit as well. The Motor City is certainly happy with a couple other teams right now. All right, perhaps there's no fan base more desperate for optimism than the Chicago Bears fans. We won't remind them of that 10-game losing streak last year, but they secured Ben Johnson as their head coach this season. As you mentioned, Tyler, in your article, they made upgrades to the offensive line, more tools for their second-year QB to use. What's the expectation for Johnson this year?
Well, it's great that we follow this up with the Detroit Lions because I feel like he's building the Chicago Bears into the image of the modern-day Detroit Lions. You talk about what the Chicago Bears were able to do this offseason, add along the interior of the offensive line, Drew Dahlman at center, Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson at the guard spots. That's going to help keep Caleb Williams upright. He was sacked the third most of any quarterback in NFL history. That's not good if you are trying to develop a young quarterback. You want to put him in the best position to succeed, and I think that Ben Johnson is really going to raise the floor of the Chicago Bears. I think we talk a lot about, how far these coaches and these acquisitions can take a team. I think just as important is how much can he raise the floor of this organization and how much can he get the best out of Caleb Williams. I think one example of this is if you look at Ben Johnson's history over the last few years calling plays with the Detroit Lions. Last year, they were #1 in the NFL in play action rate. That was just, they did the most out of any other team in the NFL. The Chicago Bears were 30th. And the reason why I bring that up is because Caleb Williams is really good at play action. He last season had an explosive play rate of 23% in play action. And so you just see the kind of fit that Ben Johnson can have with Caleb Williams as his quarterback. And we all know him coming out of college, extremely talented. But we've seen it with a lot of these quarterbacks. You can be extremely talented, but because of situations, you don't live up to that potential. I think that by bringing in Ben Johnson, they give themselves the best chance possible of getting the most out of Caleb Williams.
Absolutely, Tyler. Perhaps you're right, but I want to put you on the spot a little bit. Let's take a look at the Bears' schedule and maybe give us a prediction on what you think that Ben Johnson can do with this team in that schedule. We know they have the Vikings, then, of course, a formidable foe in the Lions. What do you think? What comes to mind, Tyler, when you look at that schedule for the Bears?
Yeah, I think they got to get through those first 3 weeks. And then that will really set the tone of how this year is going to go. I don't love that they have a week 5 bye. I mean, you'd like to have that a little bit closer to the middle of the season. But if you can get to that bye and be around 500, I think that is a really strong area of optimism. Of course, you're going into prime time with the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see how they are with J.J. McCarthy, who I know we'll talk about in a minute. But if you're able to take them down because they have a young, inexperienced quarterback, go to the Lions. I probably look at that as a loss. We'll see what happens with the Dallas Cowboys in week 3. But overall, I think that this team has the potential, maybe not to win the division, but I think that they could absolutely be a playoff team if things break right. They have pieces on the defensive side of the ball. Like I said, they fixed the offensive line. There's a ton of weapons for Caleb Williams, and now he has Ben Johnson in his ear. So the foundation is there for this team to maybe take that year 2 leap with Caleb Williams that maybe not a lot of people see, because I think they could go as far as the playoffs.
You hear that, Bears fans? The foundation is there. That should make you happy after suffering through last season. All right, you teed me up very well for the next topic, Tyler. The Minnesota Vikings. This offseason, they improved their offensive line, much to the pleasure of second-year QB J.J. McCarthy, who will take the reins after being sidelined last year from injury. All of those things offensively sound like reason for optimism, Tyler. Yes? Set up for success?
Yeah, absolutely. You look at this season for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's kind of weird, right? Because they won double-digit games. They were nearly the #1 seed in the NFC a year ago. But you're kind of taking one step back to maybe take 3 steps forward because you don't know what it's going to be like with J.J. McCarthy. But the good news is that they have a structure. They have an organization that is maybe the most in the NFL capable of ushering in a young quarterback. You look at the entire situation around J.J. McCarthy. The wide receivers, they speak for themselves. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, that is one of the best 1-2 punches, arguably the best 1-2 punch in the NFL because of Jefferson's status. You have T.J. Hawkinson at the tight end spot. We know how much rookie quarterbacks or first-year quarterbacks like to throw to the tight ends. You have Aaron Jones in the backfield, like you referenced, a sturdy offensive line, and then a defense that is just nasty. You have Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. coordinator. It's going to make his life a lot easier if this Vikings defense is limiting the impact of the opposing offenses. If they're not asking him to go throw for throw with, Caleb Williams out of the gate, or Michael Penix out of the gate, or Joe Burrow you see there in week 3, Aaron Rodgers in Ireland. You don't want your young quarterback to have to go throw for some of these star quarterbacks or future Hall of Famers that he'll see early on in the schedule. And I think that defense is really going to help him. And obviously those weapons there as well. And I didn't even mention Kevin O'Connell in his ear, a coach of the year, really kind of being that sounding board for him. So I really don't know what's going to happen with J.J. McCarthy, because all of these first-round quarterbacks, they all can't hit, so someone has to be the bust. But if there's one that was in the best possible situation to succeed, I would put it on J.J. McCarthy.
We love to hear that, Tyler. Thank you so much for the time. We appreciate you getting us ready for training camp and giving these fans reasons for optimism. Tyler, thanks so much. All right, a reminder, the NFL returns to CBS on September 7th. You can watch your local game live on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.